Daniel Carter had learned a long time ago that money could buy almost anything except the truth. At 34, he was a single father raising his 8-year-old daughter Lily in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Chicago. To the world, Daniel was just an ordinary hard-working father who drove an old SUV, packed school lunches, and worked from home whenever he could. But there was one secret he had kept from almost everyone. Daniel was the only son and heir of Eleanor Carter, one of the richest women in America and the founder of Carter Global Industries, a billion-dollar company with offices across the country. Daniel had grown up surrounded by luxury, but after becoming a father, he realized that wealth often attracted the wrong kind of people. He had seen friends suddenly become polite when they learned about his family. He had watched strangers treat him differently after discovering his last name. That was why, when his mother called him one evening and asked him to take over the company, Daniel refused. "I don't want a title," he told her. "I want to know what kind of company I would be inheriting." Eleanor understood exactly what he meant. For years, she had trusted her executive team to run the business, especially Marcus Reed, the company's powerful CEO. Marcus was charming during meetings, confident in front of investors, and always presented perfect reports. But Eleanor had begun hearing rumors that employees were unhappy. Workers complained about unfair treatment, managers leaving suddenly, and people being fired without explanation. Whenever she asked Marcus about it, he smiled and said everything was under control. Daniel became curious. He knew that if he entered the company as the billionaire heir, everyone would pretend to be perfect. So he made a decision that shocked even his mother. He would go undercover. The next Monday morning, Daniel left his expensive watch, designer clothes, and luxury car at home. Instead, he wore a faded blue shirt, worn black pants, cheap shoes, and a gray cleaning uniform. He shaved his beard differently, wore a simple baseball cap, and carried an old backpack. When Lily saw him, she stared for a moment before laughing. "Daddy, you look completely different," Daniel smiled. "That's the point." He kissed her forehead and promised to pick her up from school later. Then he drove to Carter Global Industries, parked several blocks away, and walked toward the massive glass building. The company headquarters stood in downtown Chicago like a giant monument to wealth. Employees entered through the revolving doors wearing expensive suits and carrying designer handbags. Daniel walked through the employee entrance with a mop bucket in his hands. Nobody looked twice at him. That was exactly what he wanted. The cleaning supervisor, a tired woman named Maria, handed him a badge and quickly explained his duties. "You'll be cleaning the executive floors today," she said. "Stay out of everyone's way, and don't touch anything important." Daniel nodded quietly. "Yes, ma'am." He started working immediately. At first, nobody noticed him. He cleaned hallways, emptied trash cans, wiped tables, and watched. And the more he watched, the more uncomfortable he became. Employees whispered about Marcus Reed whenever he walked by. They lowered their voices when talking about unpaid overtime, sudden layoffs, and managers who had been forced to resign. One young employee named Ethan dropped a stack of papers near Daniel and quickly bent down to pick them up. "Careful," another worker whispered. "If Marcus sees you talking to the cleaner, he might think you're wasting company time." Ethan gave a nervous smile. Daniel noticed the fear in his eyes. Later that morning, Daniel was cleaning near the executive conference room when he heard shouting inside. The door was slightly open. Marcus Reed was standing over a young woman named Sarah, who appeared close to tears. "You missed the deadline," Marcus snapped. "I didn't miss it," Sarah replied softly. "The numbers were changed after I submitted the report." Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "Are you accusing me?" Sarah immediately lowered her eyes. "No, sir." "Then fix it before lunch or clear your desk." Daniel stood frozen in the hallway, pretending to clean the same spot. He watched Sarah walk out of the room with tears in her eyes. Marcus saw Daniel and immediately frowned. "What are you staring at?" Daniel lowered his head. "Nothing, sir." "Then keep moving." Daniel continued cleaning, but inside he was angry. He had seen people like Marcus before, men who were kind to powerful people and cruel to anyone they believed could not fight back. During lunch, Daniel sat alone in a small employee cafeteria. He opened the lunchbox he had prepared that morning, but before he could take a bite, he noticed an older maintenance worker sitting nearby without food. Daniel quietly offered him half of his sandwich. The man looked surprised. "You sure?" "Yes," Daniel said. "I have another one in my bag." The man smiled. "You're new, aren't you?" "First day." "Then let me give you some advice. Keep your head down. This place isn't what it looks like." His name was Robert, and over the next few days, Daniel learned more from him than he had learned from any official report. Robert had worked at Carter Global for 22 years. He told Daniel that the company had once felt like a family, but things had changed after Marcus became CEO. Employees were afraid to speak. People who questioned decisions disappeared from the company. Bonuses were canceled while executives received massive raises. Daniel listened carefully, asking simple questions and pretending to be just another cleaner. Every evening he returned home and wrote down everything he had seen. Lily often sat beside him while he worked. "Are you still cleaning that big building?" she asked one night. Daniel smiled. "Yes." "Do people treat you nicely?" Daniel paused. "Some do." "And the others?" He looked at his daughter and realized why he was doing all of this. The others need to learn something. On the 5th day, Daniel was cleaning the executive floor when Marcus walked out of his office with several senior managers. They were discussing an employee named Sarah. Daniel recognized her name immediately. Marcus was planning to fire her. "She knows too much," one manager whispered. "Then make sure she signs the agreement," Marcus replied. "If she refuses, we'll make sure no other company hires her." Daniel's hand tightened around the mop handle. He wanted to confront Marcus right there, but he knew revealing himself too soon could destroy the entire investigation. That evening, he called his mother. "I'm ready," he said. Eleanor was silent for a moment. "Are you sure?" "Yes, I've seen enough." The next morning, Eleanor Carter arrived at her own company without warning. Her arrival sent panic through the executive. Floors. Employees rushed to prepare reports. Managers straightened their clothes, and Marcus hurried toward the lobby with a smile. He had no idea that Daniel was standing nearby in his cleaner's uniform. Eleanor looked around the building carefully. Then she saw her son. For a moment, she said nothing. Daniel simply nodded. Eleanor turned toward Marcus. "How are things going?" she asked. Marcus smiled confidently. "Perfectly. The company has never been stronger." Eleanor glanced at Daniel, then back at Marcus. "Is that so?" Marcus nodded. "Absolutely." At that moment, Daniel stepped forward. Marcus looked annoyed. "Why is the cleaner standing here?" Eleanor's expression became cold. "Because he has been working here all week." Marcus laughed. "And?" Daniel removed his cap. The room became silent. Marcus stared at his face, confused. Then Eleanor spoke the words that made everyone freeze. "Meet my son, Daniel Carter, the heir to this company." Marcus's smile disappeared. Daniel looked directly at him and said, "Now, Mr. Reed, I think we need to talk about the way you treat the people who work for you." For the first time in years, Marcus had nothing to say. Marcus Reed stood completely still as the entire executive floor fell silent. A few employees stared at Daniel, while others looked at Eleanor, trying to understand what was happening. The man they had seen carrying a mop and cleaning offices all week was not an ordinary cleaner. He was Daniel Carter, Eleanor Carter's only son, and the legal heir to Carter Global Industries. Marcus slowly forced a laugh. "This is some kind of joke, right?" Daniel shook his head. "No, Marcus. The joke was believing you could treat people like this and never be held accountable." Eleanor's expression was colder than anyone had ever seen. "I asked you for honesty, leadership, and respect," she said. "Instead, you built a company where people are afraid to speak." Marcus immediately began making excuses. He claimed the employees had misunderstood him and insisted that every decision had been made for the company's success. But Daniel had recorded everything he had witnessed during his week undercover. He presented evidence of unfair firings, threats, manipulated reports, and executive bonuses that had been approved while ordinary workers were denied promised raises. Sarah, the employee Marcus had threatened to fire, stepped forward with tears in her eyes and confirmed everything. Then Robert, the longtime maintenance worker, told Eleanor how employees had been treated for years. One by one, others began speaking. The fear that had controlled the company for so long finally disappeared. Marcus realized that the people he had ignored were now standing together. Eleanor turned to him and said, "You are no longer the CEO of Carter Global Industries." Marcus's face went pale. Security escorted him from the building as the employees watched in silence. Daniel then turned to everyone and said he had not come to punish people or sit in a luxurious office. He had come to understand the truth. "A company is not built by the people at the top," he said. "It is built by every person who shows up and works hard every day." The employees listened carefully as Daniel promised fair treatment, honest leadership, and a workplace where nobody would be judged by their position. Later that evening, Daniel returned home and found Lily waiting at the door. She looked at his cleaner's uniform and smiled. "So, Daddy, did you find out what the company is really like?" Daniel hugged her tightly. "Yes," he said, "and I think we're going to change it." He knew the hardest part was still ahead. Becoming CEO would mean facing powerful people, rebuilding trust, and proving that he was more than just a billionaire's son. But as he looked at his daughter, Daniel understood something important. He had entered the company disguised as a cleaner to discover the truth. But he had left as a leader who finally understood what real success meant. Money could build skyscrapers, buy luxury cars, and create powerful businesses, but respect had to be earned. And from that day forward, Daniel promised that every person in his company, from the newest cleaner to the highest executive, would be treated with the same dignity.